Good evening, everyone. It is a weekday. I'm Duane Whitmer, so it's time for our weekly Whitmer. Usually we do these on Wednesdays. We're doing it Thursday this week to keep things a little crazy and be that wild card that I am. Also had a meeting last night, so I'm a little bit delayed. So we ended up doing it tonight. This is live on Facebook. It gets streamed on my YouTube, and actually this is live on Facebook and Twitter. Um, and it gets uploaded to my YouTube sometime in the next 24 hours after I do it. Feel free to follow my Twitter if you're bored. I'll tag my YouTube page in there later on. But this week we're going to talk about something I'm passionate about, so I like to do that. As some of you know, I'm running for Erie County Executive as a third-party candidate. I was able to debate Mark Poloncarz in two debates, and one of the questions asked at one of the debates really stuck out, and it said, what are the three biggest issues facing Erie County? And I said that one of them is the fact that our budget's propped up by federal and state aid, which is common for most town and government. I forget what I said for the second part, but the third part I said is a bigger issue with the individuals and people's reliance on the central government to take care of them. And I started to do research on this, and this might be a two-parter because today's going to be a shorter video. I got another meeting coming up here, but I want to talk about how politicians have used the taxpayer, the average American citizen's laziness, apathy, and ignorance to exploit that. And in turn create this massive jobs program. What essentially politicians have done is rely on your inability to want to do things or care about doing things or essentially think that they should be doing things and have used that to exploit your tax dollars to further the government jobs program, if you will. I'll give you examples. Parents don't want to raise their kids, government school. You don't want to deal with people who are, addicted or homeless, you throw them in prison. You don't want to deal with your neighbors making you uncomfortable, police. You don't want to deal with XYZ. There's a government program for that. Just let the government take care of it. One interesting statistic was I use Medicare as an example. Medicare was created in 1965, and they said, Medicare is great. I got it right here. On July 30, 1965, Lyndon Johnson. Let's post this right here. This is from July 30th, 1965. Lyndon Johnson signed legislation that established Medicare and Medicaid. And for 50 years, these programs have been protecting the health and well-being of millions of families, saving lives, and improving the economic security of our nation. Well, if you look at Americans' life expectancy in 1965, it was 70. If you look at our life expectancy now, it's 75. So 50 years, it has actually slowed the 50 years prior from 1935. Life expectancy is up like 30 years. Now it's only up a couple. I mean, I get it. It's going to top out. It's an asymptote. It's not it's going to slow down. But if you talk about life expectancy in the U.S., over the past 160 years, life expectancy from birth has risen, and it's because mostly infant and child mortality rates have decreased, which has nothing to do with seniors, and also fewer wars, sort of. I mean, we're still in wars, and better living standards. So Medicare, Medicaid have really done nothing to expand, human life, expand the lifespan. But government took an advantage to raise your taxes, tax a hell of a lot of people, put out a hell of a lot of jobs, essentially create a massive slush fund of tax dollars under the guise of protecting you. And here it is. Same with Social Security. That's another great example. Hey, government, I don't want to save my own money. Out comes Social Security, which is a massive Ponzi scheme, time and time proven again. I'll do my own video on this one day when I have more time to do all the research, but essentially it's been proven time and time again. If you save your own money over the course of 40 years, you'll have significantly more invested and coming in than you would if you just put into Social Security. It's essentially a Ponzi scheme, and it's pretty sad to see. But that's another example of how politicians use people's laziness and apathy to essentially exploit them and expand the jobs program. Another example is to prove this is I looked up how many government employees you had over the course of government employees from 1939 to today. And in 1939, there were about 4 million government employees in the United States, which is federal, state, county, etc. level. And the population in 1930 was, I have it right here, give me a second. The population in 1930 was 123 million. So you had 4 million government employees. It's a round number of 123 million population. 3% of the population was employed by the government. Does anyone want to take a guess at what that number is today? What percentage of our population is employed by the government? I'll give you a clue. It's higher than 3%. Today it's about 18%. There's about 25 million government employees. 25 million government employees to a population of 330 million people. Let me do the math. Did it? Yeah, it's a little bit higher. That number is not correct. I'm giving you wrong numbers because it's actually. I just had it right here. I lost the number, but it's essentially about 18 to 20% of people work for the government, and that doesn't include. That's working for the government. That doesn't include. This is an issue that bothers me. Is it doesn't include organizations that are essentially government funded. I'll give you an example: is if the government makes a not-for-profit, like a development corporation or a some not-for-profit agency, and the government funds it through grants, those jobs, aren't technically government jobs. If 100% of your agency funding comes from government, there is no difference. So it's kind of one of those weird loopholes where it's technically not counted as a government job, yet 100% of their funding comes from the government. And this also doesn't include, and this is one, maybe I'll take more time on this and do more research on this. This doesn't include people who are, number one, retired from government jobs, whose pension or retirement comes directly from the government. And this doesn't include people who are on some sort of assistance, Social Security, or I'm trying to think of another example of this, Social Security or government assistance, which means that a large chunk of our population relies on the government to exist, which is terrifying because that's how Ponzi scheme works. That essentially a handful are benefited by the work of everyone. So essentially, like I said, well, what's your third issue? My third issue is that I'm going to use Erie County in Western New York as an example. You had a shooting in Buffalo that was a racially motivated mass shooting in Buffalo by a guy who hated minorities and everyone else that wasn't like him. Well, the government solution is not, in my opinion, gun control, because obviously New York State has some of the strictest gun laws in the country and it didn't stop the shooting. The answer isn't more police. The answer isn't a police officer in every corner, because as we saw with Uvalde and Stoneman Douglas, the police have no right to protect you. It's not their job to protect you. It's been Supreme Court cases have been decided that the police don't have to protect you. The government doesn't have to protect you. The solution is you are your own first responder. The solution is to obtain your own firearm, get permitted if you need to, and train with it, become proficient with it, and handle the threats as you see fit. But politicians have used it as an example of, hey, give me more tax dollars, give me more money, we'll create more government-sponsored jobs, and we'll essentially have a stronger machine that we control under the guise of protecting you. Same thing with the First Amendment. You see with the media, um, a lot of media stations have become essentially extensions of government propaganda, government PR firms. We saw this really during COVID, where my favorite video is the mayor of New York City, who's an absolute buffoon, eating fries and a hamburger at like 10:30 in the morning, saying that he got this free hamburger and fry because he got vaccinated. It's so great, and it's like, dude, got a cholesterol-ridden fatty burger and shitty deep fried fries for getting vaccinated, ignoring the fact that 84% of people died under COVID were overweight and obese, and that was one of the biggest comorbidities with COVID. And yet you're telling people to get free burger and fries. Clown world by the government, but whatever. The media became essentially a propaganda PR tool for the government, and really exploited that during the lockdowns. You are your own first responder. You are your own media station. You have a phone with a smartphone with recording capabilities. You are your own media. You are your own first responder. Extend that to in Western New York, we had two massive snowstorms that 40 people died in one of the snowstorms, which the government did a really good job to propagandize that white people also died because people were questioning the response. And instead of saying, well, we're going to fix the response, we're going to make it easier for people to understand what's going on, they said, hey, white people died too. We're not racist. I'm not kidding. Erie County's response. They made sure they told the demographics of who died in the storm because they wanted everyone to know that it wasn't just minorities that died, white people died too. Instead of understanding that what was proven as a massive support system during the storm was the snowmobile clubs and people with snowmobiles helping get supplies and helping rescue people instead of spending resources and training the population on how to handle the storm, how to take care of yourself. What does the government do? The government's response is to give out these storm survival kits, which are probably some of the worst things. I was able to get one. I'm gonna analyze one in a video. I was able to get a hold of one, and essentially these storm survival kits are the biggest pieces of shit I've ever seen in my life. And if you're in a snowstorm with this snow survival kit, it's a security blanket because it does not help you. It's cheap Amazon made bullshit that if you use it in a snowstorm and you rely on it to function, you will probably die. It is not good quality equipment. It's cheap Amazon uh, crap that they put in a little plastic bag and called it a snow survival kit. And if you're using that to survive, you're done for. I'm sorry, but you're absolutely done for. But what happened was the government created a job. Now there's like a storm management person in Erie County, or a director of storm management. They essentially created a new government job for some woman to have this position, and her idea was to give out these storm survival kits, which are absolutely crap. Instead of saying, hey, we're going to run a campaign to educate the population on what to do in a snowstorm. We're going to hold trainings for people in these snowmobile clubs to help us with essentially allow the community to rally around support to help each other supplies and rescue people. Volunteer fire departments do. No, instead we're just going to tax you more, and the government's going to fix it. And their solution is actually more problematic than the answer. Another great example is the migrant crisis. What's going on with the migrants is essentially government-sponsored human trafficking and money laundering, in which they're taking money from the taxpayers, filtering it through these private companies, and treating these migrants absolutely terrible. Another great example is, people say, well, we should help these people. Our government intervention caused this migrant crisis, and we should bring them here and take care of them. But instead of doing it the right way, where private companies can bid properly, we just allow some private company to do a no bid contract. $432 million goes to that company, and now they're being treated terribly. They can't talk to any private immigration attorney. Their paperwork's being delayed. There's massive shortcomings in all of that. They're stuck, not able to work. It's sad. Another example is I look at this similar to I just had when I'm drawing a blank. So did snow removal, migrants, did the police department. All these cars are getting stolen, so everyone's give more money to the cops instead of training people on how to don't leave your car running, don't leave your keys in your car in your driveway. Basic things like that. Don't buy a Kia. Let the market respond to Kia, and just don't buy a Kia. Lately, the political class has done a good job, and this is where I'll wrap up, is essentially what you have going on in this country is people don't want to do things. They don't want to take care of themselves. They don't want to do something. They don't want to raise their kids. So here come government schools. They don't want to deal with something that makes them uncomfortable. Here comes government prisons. They don't want to deal with taking care of their vehicles or taking care of their property. Here comes government sponsored police. Um, all of those things are essentially the political class and politicians exploiting your fears and your weaknesses to take more control and expand the jobs program. Why is that so important? Well, because we'll learn soon, because I'm doing a project on the Village of Depew in New York. The Village of Depew has a $14 million budget, which is population has gone from 17,000 to 15,000, and their budget has gone from like 10 million to 14 million. So you got a shrinking population and a growing budget, which are two things you don't want. Those are you're going the wrong way in both. You want population to grow, budget go down. Not the point. So they have this per capita burden of $1,000 per man, woman, child. And if you look at the Village of Depew's budget, it's $14 million budget. $10 million goes to police, the police department, or staff salaries and benefits. So you're paying $14 million in taxes, and actually it's close to 11 million goes to the jobs program and benefits. It's essentially a grift. And politicians know that, and know that the bigger the machine gets, the more jobs they control, the harder it is to stop the stranglehold that the machine has on the system. If you live in Depew, uh, if, like I said, 20% of the people in Depew work for the government, they're not going to vote to dissolve the government. They're not going to vote to lose their program. So they have a 20% uh, population going to vote to keep the jobs program. Well, let's expand this. If 20%, work for the government, let's say 10 work for the village or some regard. Well, they have family, they have husband, they have wife, they have kids, they have children, they have cousins, they have brothers, they have sisters. If they can convince their family to vote to keep their job, you're never going to vote to dissolve that machine. It's essentially the grift. The grifter isn't going to let the population vote to end the grift. And so that's where you see this massive explosion in government jobs, which turns into a massive explosion in spending, which turns into a massive explosion of tax burden onto the non-political class, which is shrinking. So that leads up to, with any Ponzi scheme, eventually a massive implosion where it can't sustain itself. And I think we're almost there. I think Social Security is almost there, and I think that the jobs program is almost there. I think you're going to see a pretty crazy happening in New York in the next probably 5 to 10 years, where New York won't be able to afford all the staff salaries and all the pensions and benefits that they're giving, and you're either going to see massive population, or pardon me, mass benefit cuts, or you're going to see a massive tax increase because we have a shrinking population and a growing budget. So it'll be an interesting thing to see. But thanks, guys, for tuning in. I'm going to cut this one short because I got another meeting here in a little bit. But we'll be in touch. I hope you guys have a great week. We got our first snowfall in Western New York. That was crap. I'm not a huge fan of the snow, but thanks, guys, for tuning in. Hope you guys have a great week. I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks, guys. Take care.